Thank you for taking the time to join in with Uncommon Women Podcast, a dope podcast to bring light to reality from real life people sharing real life stories with a host of women having real life talk, the good and the bad, with no judgment. Uncommon Women's Loyalty is here to support those that need a safe space to speak their truth and rawness to the world. Tune in, relax, take notes, and let's vibe. Here are your hosts, Uncommon Women.
Good evening, everyone. This is Uncommon Women here. I am Jenny Lee, your co-host.
And I am Tyra, also known as the Gold Guru.
And we have an amazing guest speaker. Her name is Marcia Hurt. She's going to share her story of losing a child due to heart disease as a boy mom who is familiar with what it means to suffer the devastating loss of a child. Her mission now is to help as many as possible to navigate the spaces of grief and embrace their healing process. Hi, Marcia.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? I'm so excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So before we get started, is there any fun facts about you you'd like to let us know?
I am a boy mom. I heard you mention that. I have 3 amazing boys. Right now I am launching a nonprofit called A Month's Heart. We'll talk about that in the interview.
Okay.
And I love people. So what's up?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Okay, awesome. So can you tell us how your life was growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up, I was the second child of 5 kids. My mom, she did have a husband, but he wasn't like really a stepfather. So I grew up with a stepfather in the home, but my mom, we didn't grow up, but we weren't wealthy either. We always had enough. As far as my father was not in my life, but I grew up with my paternal grandparents. They were very active. In fact, my father committed suicide when I was 11. And God allowed me to see him passing before it even happened, like a week before.
Wow.
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by that?
So I had a dream. So my dad wasn't active in my life. Like I said, I was, but my paternal grandparents was. One night I had a dream that my father was dead. And so I called my grandmother and I'm crying on the phone, like, grandma, like I had a dream that my father died. And she was like, well, I don't know where he is because my mom had him on child support and she didn't want us to find him. So anyways, he called right after I got off the phone with her. And him and my mom were arguing. So I didn't really get to talk to him. A week later, my mom pulled us upstairs, me and my brother, and she was like, your father passed away.
Wow. That is crazy. Was your faith strong? Like, how do you feel like that dream came about? Like, as a kid? Yeah.
As a kid, I was probably 11. I don't remember how my faith was because at the time, we had moved to Las Vegas, and although I grew up Christian, the family that we were living with, they practiced Buddhism. And so I was like in the in-between. But what I do remember is my first feeling of feeling rage. I felt rage so heavy once they told me that he passed away.
Wow.
So
and that dream, yeah, that's crazy. Sorry, Jenny, go ahead.
No, it's okay. So you being at 11 years old and you being angry, obviously it's a process of grief. Were you angry because maybe you felt that he left you, or you were just angry because of the situation?
To be honest with you, I don't know why I was angry. I grew up angry as a child because I remember wanting my father like really bad. I even got a tattoo of a rest in peace tattoo. But the truth was, I never really even knew him, right?
Yeah.
And so, to be completely honest, later in life, I think that whatever spirit was on him, because I do believe in God, I believe in Jesus, but I also believe in spirits. I believe that whatever spirit was on him was transferable. Because my father was an angry man. It was
That's
actually
crazy.
a murder-suicide. So it wasn't, maybe I should give more context. It was more of
Okay.
a murder-suicide. He murdered his girlfriend, and because he didn't want to go to jail, he killed himself.
Yeah, that
Wow.
makes sense. And earlier I was gonna say, it's crazy because you were 11 and you had that dream, and you just said you believe in spirits and Jesus, and it's crazy because it's at that age, so early, it was confirmation that you are powerful, spirits are real, you know what's going on, and it's just insane. So even though you were angry, it makes sense. And also
Yeah.
too, you never really got a hold of something. Like your dad was that one thing that you feel like you couldn't really get, because when he was here, he wasn't even there,
Right.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
But it's crazy to see how you are aware now. How did your anger turn into positivity? How is life for you now?
Life for me now is great, honestly. I mean, I've suffered a lot of loss since then as well. Both living people and people that have passed, including my son. But I learned to look at what's around me instead of just focusing in on the problem. So with my
Okay.
father, although my father wasn't present, and even if he was present, he probably wouldn't have been in my life anyway. So it was easier for me to deal with, like, oh, you can't be there for me because you're not
Absolutely.
here, right?
Okay.
Yes.
And also God put men in my life that stepped into that role. Maybe if he was here, I would still be chasing that love, and I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have the men that do support me right now.
Hmm.
The father figures, I should say.
Agreed.
Okay. I agree. Definitely agree with that.
You lost
So,
one and gained a
A
village.
bunch. I mean,
mm,
and one of them, like one of my major father figures, he's not even directly related to me.
mm,
Those
He
are
was
always the
my
best.
mom's husband's cousin, who just
wow.
God put in my life to help me and my kids. Like it's crazy
Wow.
how God
That's
works,
so
honestly.
good. It's
Yeah.
so good. It's so good that how God puts people in your life that you need. And that
Yes.
they're there for a lifetime. He puts people, I feel like he puts people who we need in our life to
Hmm.
just support us, be there for us, and just
Yeah.
somebody to lean on to
Yeah.
understand us, to guide us. And that is so amazing how he's done that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
a
if
lot of the
you're if
time, it's
you're
not what
focused
we
on the
want.
problem, I'm sorry.
I said it's always not what we want. To you,
Yup.
it's
Yeah.
just like,
Mm-hmm.
I just want this one person, but God was like, it's okay. I have
Yeah.
a ton.
I got you, right? I got
That is
you.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we go back and can you tell us the story about your son?
Absolutely. So, Amun, that was his name. His name was Amun. Um, I got married. Well, I have three sons, like I said. After my two sons, I got married. Me and my husband had another son, and and my ex-husband now was such a great father that I wanted another son, and so we got pregnant with our last son, and at 20 weeks utero, we went to have the ultrasound to find out what we were going to have, and I was like, oh, let me get a girl. And the lady, the lady, I'm just gonna call her the technician, she was
Uh-huh.
like, oh, it's a boy. And I was like, you know what, it's okay if it's a boy as long as he's healthy. And she went, like, the room was silent, and so immediately we're like, okay, like, whatever. So she's like, the doctor's gonna come talk to you. The doctor came in. They were like, listen, like, he only has half of a heart. It's called hyperplastic left heart syndrome. We're going to send you to a surgeon. It's not something that they can fix, but they can tell you what your options are. And so that was at 20 weeks. We saw several surgeons. We saw several doctors to try to get a second opinion, third opinion. And the thing is, with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, it's basically when the left side of the heart doesn't develop, and the left side of the heart is the part that provides oxygen to the body or oxygenates the blood. And so we had a choice to abort, um, because the 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 defect that he had was not one that they can correct. He would have to go through 3 surgeries before the age of 2, and that was no guarantee. Eventually, he would have to have heart surgery. And so, taking into consideration that we had 3 other kids, were like, is this a life that we can afford? Like, what can we do this? So anyways, eventually, like at 32 weeks, they told us that it's called a PDA. That's what they call it. They're like, it's too small. We can't do the surgery anyway. Like, even if you wanted to, we can't do the surgery. So for me, I was like, you've got to be kidding me with God. And I told God, either take him or heal him. Those are your two options, God. Take my son or heal my son, because first of all, him already growing in my body. What? Like, I couldn't imagine seeing him and then being like, okay, well, now I have to give him back. Like, just take him while he's in here. That way I ain't even got to go through him crying, holding him, seeing his eyes. None of those things. Just go ahead and take him. And so they told us that we didn't have an option. And so on the day of the day he was born, I had a C-section. They were like, bring all your family. He's not going to make it. Just bring all your family. They literally cut me open, handed him to me, no diaper, no nothing. Just, they didn't clean him off. They were like, here you go. Here he is. You got a couple hours.
Wow.
Yeah. But God,
did they mentally oh wow, that wasn't
that wasn't it.
Oh, wait.
That was a pause.
Yes, I heard the pause. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And so to answer your question, was I mentally prepared? Absolutely not.
Okay.
I mean, even though I knew that was the ultimate, how do you prepare for something like that? Seriously. Like, because one thing was this is a child.
Mm-hmm.
It's a child. And it's like, it messed me up. So anyway, do you want to continue with the story?
Absolutely, please. Yeah.
Okay.
No, keep going.
So, like I said, the expectation was for him to pass after 4 hours. The next day, the nurse came in. She's like, I'm so sorry for your loss. And I was like, well, he's right here. So can I get a diaper?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't know. They were like, we didn't expect this. So they gave us a choice to either put him in a NICU and let him pass away at the hospital or take him home. And I was like, I want to take my baby home.
Absolutely.
He was like a normal baby. He had jaundice. He was yellow. They sent us home with a nurse to come check on him, because they're like, eventually it's going to happen. And when it does happen, we want to make sure that you have the right tools to be prepared for it. Right. And so they sent us home. Week 1, he was good. Week 2, he was good. Week 3, he was about 6 weeks in. I was holding him. His dad was at work. I was holding him, and he just started breathing real heavy. Like, and I'm like, so I'm patting him. I'm like, babe, it's okay. Like, it's okay, And he was fine. 2 weeks later, he was about 8-9 weeks. It started happening again, but this time we were barbecuing, and it wouldn't stop. Like, he just kept, and so I'm like, I ran downstairs and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Like, something is wrong. And so he's like, call the nurse. We called the nurse. The nurse is like, I'm on my way to bring the EpiPen. And I was just like, I can't do this. Like, I cannot sit here and watch my baby die. And so we rushed him to the hospital, and they're like, are you sure you want him to have surgery? I'm like, do whatever you got to do to save my son. And so all the IVs, they cut off all of his clothes. They was giving him shots, and then they airlifted him to a children's hospital where he had his first surgery.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what age is this first surgery?
He was 9 weeks.
Wow. He was tiny.
He was 9 weeks, and the blood from his heart, because it wasn't functioning properly, it started spilling liquid into his lungs.
Oh, wow.
And so he was like basically drowning from the inside out. So they did the surgery. He was great. He was great. Wow. And then they were like, they did whatever reconstructive surgery they did to move the fluid elsewhere, but they were like, like, that's just a tiny bit. You need to bring him back in 2 weeks to get his first constructive surgery. So we're like, okay. we took him in. He was smiling. This is the end of August. He was smiling, and I'm like, some in my chest, I felt like something was wrong. I'm like, oh my God, like, okay. So we sent him into surgery. He was fine. He was smiling. He came out. He was blue.
Wow.
He was blue, bluish green. He had a NG tube. And I lost it.
I can imagine.
I lost it because when he went in, he was fine. And it was like, how do you go from being fine to being blue? What happened in surgery was his left lung collapsed. And when they told me that, I was like, are you effing kidding me? Like, are you serious? And the doctor was so rude. She was like, she's like, what is your problem? And I'm like, I ain't gonna lie to y'all, I was ready to swing. Lord forgive me, but it's the truth.
I'm ready to swing for you.
I mean, but come on. I mean, like, if she's being rude like that, I'm like, you're a mom. Like,
yeah.
Like, but you know what? She was a surgeon. And so here's the thing. Typically in surgery, if your lung collapse, it's gonna come back. It's gonna take a couple of days for it to come back, but it'll come back. So she's looking at me like, what's wrong with you? Like, the lung is gonna come back. And I'm like, well, I'm not a doctor. How am I supposed to know that? Another doctor pulled me out of the room and explained that to me. So I'm like, okay. Unfortunately for mine, his lung never recovered.
Wow.
It never recovered.
And
a question I wanted to.
I'm sorry. And she was upset that you were like, you're our mom. This is your child. You know, I think as parents, like, you know, I want to go. You said when you first found out about your child, you know, being in your womb, and they're telling you that, you know, your child has a heart, you know, has this heart condition. You know, no mother, you know, especially someone that's carrying. We're not ever prepared for anything like this.
Yeah,
there is so many things that we start to think and
exactly,
and it's hard to process because this is our child, you know, where we get pregnant, you know, we carry this baby in our womb, and they don't. This doctor expected you not to react in any type of way. She's crazy.
Man, she almost got it in that hospital room, y'all.
Oh my goodness. I cannot fathom that because it's mind-boggling how some people can be very insensitive.
Yeah. And the problem is with that is she's a surgeon. So she's seeing, God bless her soul, I don't know how they do it, but they see crazy stuff on a daily basis. So they're so monotone. But this is a mother who just, you know, I'm like, you got to think about it. And another thing that I wanted to ask you is, like, how do you deal with the up and down of your baby smiling and then he's not okay, and then he's okay, and then he's not okay at the barbecue? Like, it's an emotional roller coaster. But how does that work with you and your faith and all that along the way? Because you also have other kids that you have to be strong for. So
exactly.
I can't imagine.
And thankfully, I really was focused on the money. My partner at the time, my ex-husband, he was really focused on the other kids. Like, I was at the hospital most of the time, and he was with the kids most of the time. As far as my faith, I would pray, and I had my mom. She's a prayer warrior. But I was angry with God. Can I be honest?
No, because I love that. I'll be honest, because we do that a lot and we don't really talk about that. And that is normal.
I was angry with God because my religion told me that my son would be blessed because I'm in a marriage. Well, that was I'm like, how is it that I had 2 kids out of wedlock? They're perfectly healthy. My son has a heart condition and I'm married.
Yeah, you're like, I did what you wanted.
You hear what I'm saying? Yeah. Not only that, at the time, so my ex-husband had an ex-wife, and she was pregnant at the same time, and her baby was healthy, and she wasn't married, and me and her had conflicts, and I chose to end the conflict between me and her. So I'm like, I'm doing everything that I think is right. I'm trying to, you know, be cordial with people. I'm forgiving people. And then, boom, you give me a child that has a heart condition that's you can't cure it. And I'm married. Like, I'm not cheating on my husband. Like,
and amen.
make it make sense.
Mhm.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I was angry. I was angry during the process. I did a lot of praying, but after it was over, I realized just how angry I was with God, and He allowed me to have that time.
Mm.
Amen. That's important too.
Yeah,
That's important.
for sure.
And I
Yeah.
think that what's important is that I think He knew you were angry with Him, but that how honest you were about it, which was
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it's important you can be mad at God. That's normal. We've all done it.
He
But
knows.
you didn't lose track of your faith and who He is to you. You know what I mean? And I think even though in that,
Well, I ain't gonna. I'm not. I'm one to always be honest. Okay.
yes, please.
I did. I for a moment there, I did. I did lose my faith after the fact because, like I said, I was confused. I was very confused, and after my divorce, after moving to Texas, and everything that I went through after losing my son too, God put me in a place where I had no choice but to call back on Him. Right?
Yeah.
I had gotten so low that I told my kids, my older two kids, that I had at the time, or I still have them, but that were with me at the time. I told them, I hate you. That's how low I was. And in that very moment, it was like a light bulb went off. I'm like, how could you tell your children that you hate them? Like, they're innocent. And I think they were like 13. No. How we've been in Texas? They were 11 and 9. And so I took my son to football practice, and I was literally in the car yelling, God, what do you want from me? Literally. And my son was sitting in the car right next to me. I'm like, you took everything from me, because my son was another thing that I wanted that was taken, just like my father. So I felt like you just keep taking everything. Like, what do you want? Like, you know, and that was my communication to God. What, you take everything. What do you want? Literally.
Wow. So after your son's lung never recovered, was that just, did he just pass after that? Or?
No. So that was in August when he had when his lung collapsed. Okay. We were in the hospital for about 3 months, up and down, trying to get him to be able to come home and be able to live with one lung and half of a heart. Eventually, we did go home the week before Thanksgiving, and that was a blessing because they sent us home. I had to learn how to put a feeding tube in his nose, how to check his heart rate, how to make sure that the placement was right, a whole oxygen tank. We learned a lot. Well, I learned a lot. We did. But he did come home. But the thing with his heart condition and him having one lung, it was kind of like having COVID-19. And I say that because anything would have put him in the hospital. Like a sniffle, any allergy, anything, we're back in the hospital. Plus, he was on like 8 different medications. So between Thanksgiving, we were in the hospital maybe every other week until about the end of January, because we lived in Illinois and it was cold and, you know, flu season and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, February, he was good. I went back to work about March, and his dad stayed home with him. He learned how to sit up on his own. He eventually got off his feeding tube. He learned how to take a bottle. He learned how to eat Cheetos. And
that's a long way from the feeding tube.
Literally a miracle. Literally, like a miracle. Like, we were going to see specialists, like speech therapists. But yeah, he was doing everything that they thought that he wasn't going to do. Seriously.
You see, this is what I be saying. I said there is a God, and because, you know, doctors can sit there and say whatever they want. At the end of the day, when God has His hand over a child or someone, they're gonna do it. They're gonna do it. Can't no one say There's nothing impossible at all.
I was gonna say, I think, and it's
Yeah.
important. It's, I think it's important too, because it's like us humans, we can't call it. I know these doctors saw this 100 times over, but I think it's important that we don't get the final say. We
Yeah,
are not
exactly.
in control.
I
Yeah,
love
that
that.
is
That's
crazy.
very true. That's very true. But so I went back to work. He was with his dad, and then the summertime came around, so he started getting a little agitated. And around his first birthday, he had went from 4 liters of oxygen to 8 liters and then to 12. And so I really we ended up back in the hospital after his first birthday. We had a birthday party for him. And he was already kind of like fussy or whatever, but at the birthday party, he was just lethargic. Like he was just faint. Like he didn't want to do anything. He was just laying on me, and you know, he wasn't himself. So his birthday is May 24th. The party was probably like June 1st. We were at the party outside. It was hot. We had fans. He didn't do anything. And so on our way home, he was just sleeping. And I told his dad, I'm like, something is not right. Like he's on too much oxygen. He only got one lung. And if you don't know, the more oxygen that you are on, it starts to damage the lung, right? And so we took him. I'm taking him to his dad. Like he's fine. And I was like, no, I'm gonna take him to the emergency room because he had been sleeping for like 4 hours, like just sleep. And so we took him to the emergency room. And I'm holding him. They're like, yeah, his oxygen level is low. He needs to go to the hospital. But the thing was, they were like, we were going to transport him to the hospital. He didn't have to be airlifted this time. This time they were going to take him on a stretcher in an ambulance. But I couldn't be in the bed with him. And so when I handed him over to the EMTs and they put him in the stretcher, he cried so hard. He cried so hard. And like after a few minutes, like the monitor, he just froze and then the monitor went to 0. So I believe he had a heart attack. It wasn't confirmed, but that's what I believe because the way that he looked and like the monitor just went flat, and like his heart probably just stopped for a second. So anyways, we went to the hospital and I thought that it was going to be a normal visit. It would be there for a week. So we were staying at the Ronald McDonald House. I would go from the hospital to the home, from the hospital back to, not to hospital to home, but hospital to work, back to Ronald McDonald's house in the hospital to work. And one day I was getting off work and his dad was with him because he wasn't working at the time. And I'm like, how's he doing? Is he all right? He was like, yeah, he's good. And I was like, okay, let me talk to him. He's cool, man. He's fine. I'm going to run home, get some clothes, and then I'll be there. When I got there, his levels were low. His oxygen levels were low. He was fussy. They're like, we don't know what's wrong with him. I'm like, okay, well, let me hold him. So I just held him until he went to sleep. And then they were like, we had a DNR. And so they were like, his heart is failing. We're going to give him some medication, and that should help his heart within a week. So we're like, okay. Then, like a week later, they're like, well, we gave him the medication. His heart is still failing. Like it's not coming back. So I'm at the hospital. I'm holding him until he goes to sleep. He goes to sleep. So I go up to Ronald McDonald House. I'm tired. I'm like, I'm going to get some clothes, say hi to the other kids because the kids couldn't come to the hospital. We had to wear like plastic clothing to go in there. And I fell asleep. And when I woke up, I had like 10 missed calls from the hospital. He declined overnight and he was now in a coma. And so they're like, well, we're going to see what happens. He was like in a coma for like 2 weeks, an induced coma. They were trying to see if maybe they can stop him from fighting so maybe his heart can get it together. As I'm going to say, get it together. Throughout that time, I was still working, going work to the hospital every day, because we still had bills We still had other kids, and my husband at the time was not working. Um, and then one day they called us. They was like, you know what? He's starting to fight the medication. Like, he literally had straps on his hands and his arms because he started moving. Like, it stopped working. You know, after a while, your body gets used to that medication and it doesn't work the same.
Yeah.
And so then he started getting rashes all over his body. They couldn't explain the rashes. He was really swollen from the water retention. And so they were like, you know, he's the only reason why he's surviving right now is because of that tube that he has in his throat. You should probably think about pulling the plug. And I was like, no, that's not going to happen. Of course, not in that manner, but I was like, no. And I told my ex-husband at the time, like, you know, we shouldn't leave him. Like, don't leave him alone. I just, in my spirit, I was just like, don't leave him alone. That night, I stayed with him and I prayed. I was like, you know, God, no, I prayed and I talked to my son. And I told him that it was okay to stop fighting. I told him that I would be okay and that I loved him, because I truly believe that when I had the phone call with him and he was cooling, that he waited for me to get there. I truly believe that. And so that night I prayed and I told God, like, it's okay. And then I told my son, like, it's okay, like, I'll be okay. And then me and his father switched. He said that he had a conversation with him too. I don't know what their conversation was. But anyways, I was in the shower. I woke up late because usually I would go to the hospital to say something to my son and I would just go to work. I woke up late and I called my ex-husband and I was like, how's he doing? He was like, he's still here. He's good. So I'm like, okay, just stay with him until I get out the shower. When I got out the shower, my ex-spouse was there. He was there in the room and I was like freaking out. But I was like, you know what? I got to go to work. I'm late. I had just started that job, you know, the 90 days thing or whatever. And my spirit said, no, go to the hospital. Like, go. I went to the hospital and it was maybe 4 doctors around him. All the sirens from his machines are going off. And his nurse was crying. The nurse that stayed with him. She was a young nurse. And they were like, he's not going to make it. And so I called him. I was like, bring the kids over, come back. Like, he's dying, come back. And they were like, do you want to hold him? And I was like, yeah, like, let me hold him. So I held him until he took his last breath. And it wasn't long. And it was like, he looked, after it was all said and done, he looked so peaceful. So when you pass away, or if you ever witness anyone pass away, there's like a weird sound, like your spirit's leaving. It was kind of like a large burp, kind of. And then like you can see the fluid from his veins just like drain. And he was just pale. Like there was no pigment. It was just, I don't know how to explain it. And yeah, we sat there till my mom got there, and then they were like, you want to clean him up? They handed us some big baby wipes to wipe his body down. And my ex-husband, he took the kids, they went back to the Ronald McDonald house, and I wiped him off, and then they were like, okay, like, they're going to come get him. And that was that.
Wow. That is crazy. One thing that stood out to me is you said the night that he went into a coma, that you actually got sleep, real sleep. And I think that is so significant because also too, when you talk to your son and you told him like, you can stop fighting, it was like, he was like, Mom, go to sleep. You stop fighting. And I think, you know what I mean? And it is crazy because you wouldn't have got any sleep if you knew that information prior, you know, and that probably would have kept you up until the end. And I love that you were able to get rest and come to terms. I'm glad that, you know, your last experience, because it seems like hospitals, they were trying you a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that your last experience, I'm glad it went well. And I'm glad that it was peaceful. I'm honestly surprised. Sorry. I'm surprised and glad that they let you clean him. That is something that you'll never forget.
No.
And I don't even think that's super traditional either. So that is amazing. Yeah. I know it's funny that you said he looked the most at peace afterwards. I work in a hospital too, and I actually just encountered my first patient death. I don't really deal with that because I'm a med surge. That typically stuff doesn't go wrong, and if it does, it goes to a higher level. And it was crazy because when the patient was living, you think like, oh, this patient is so grumpy and so mean. Whereas your son was a baby, so he didn't really have much of a personality besides him going through pain. So it's like you see him struggling, and then I see my patient going through it, and it was like he wasn't grumpy, he was in pain. And when God took his soul, genuinely, that was all I kept saying, like as I was cleaning him. That's why I'm surprised they let you do it, and I'm so glad they did. I just kept saying, like, I'm so glad you're, like, you look okay. You know, like, I was just like, wow, I'm so, like, this is probably the best. There was nothing that we could do for you. I'm so glad you're at peace. And I'm so glad you are as well. It seems like you're at peace now.
I am. It took a while for me to get here, but I am, for sure.
Yeah.
I can imagine. I mean, what you went through in the beginning, but now you look at peace, and you can tell your story, you know, and you know, let them know this, you know, he was at peace, you know, and death isn't. I'm a nurse's aide, so I see a lot of it, and they usually just die, and sometimes I feel like sometimes you just take your last breath. I've seen where people take their last breath, like they're like just ready to go. And I think that is so peaceful. And I think that's the best way, you know, like your son, like you said, you saw your son, like he just left peaceful, and that's amazing. Because that goes to show like God was there with him at that time.
For sure. That's the best part. And then also what helped me find peace with my son is, I think, this is going to be weird, but I say that God sent his son to save the world, but he sent my son to save me. Because
that is so
no,
good.
seriously. Seriously, because before, you know, even though I said my ex-husband was an amazing father, he still is an amazing father. We weren't happy, right? And so that was the catalyst that led to us end up being divorced, and we're both happy now. And then also, I feel like Amun was sent here for a purpose. When we were in the Ronald McDonald house, life didn't stop. You know what I mean? Like, we were trying to deal with a child that was sick, but the bills did not stop. The bills didn't stop. People want their house payments, you know.
They
had
don't
their
care.
kids, like, life did not stop.
Life does not stop for that.
It does not stop. And so I feel like there's a need there, which is why I'm starting my Mun Foundation, because my Mun's Heart Foundation, because people shouldn't have to worry about bills while they're going through something as traumatic as having your child in the hospital, right? And then honestly, I've never even heard of like hypoplastic left heart syndrome. Like, there are several heart conditions, and I think that same year that my son passed, I think it's James Fallon or Jamie Fallon, whatever his name is, his son had a heart condition too, and then it became like something that people were aware of. And so I just think that there's a need there, and I feel like God put me in that position so that I can see what the need was. And then, like, because and here's another thing about my faith, I reached out to churches that I tithed to, churches that I was faithful to, and I had no one came to pray for my son. There was when I was sitting in the hospital for months at a time, you didn't see a church. I did not see a church come through and pray for the families or offer help to the families. I didn't see that. There was a chaplain, but all these mega churches, one of the churches that I reached out to was a mega church, no response. And so for me, it was like, it helped me. I will be honest and say that it helped me get rid of my religion and build a relationship with God himself to see.
Amen.
I still follow Jesus. I'm not saying that. I don't believe
no,
in
that's
Jesus.
okay.
I'm just saying that the religious part of it really shook me, because I'm like, here it is. First, I learned that my child should be blessed because I'm married, and that's not necessarily the case. And then where is the meat that you guys speak about? You bring all the tithes and offering to the storehouse. There'll be meat in my house. I didn't even get a prayer, and so I was just like, God, this can't be it.
So I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you, because I think we get so caught up in that mindset of thinking we have to be faithful to the church, the whole time we're missing the bigger picture, and that's being faithful to God.
Yeah.
Because when the tables were turned, those people were not faithful to you. And just like you said, the world didn't stop. They were worried about their mortgage that needed paid,
Exactly.
But I'm so glad. So I'm so glad you were able to evolve into a better woman after all this trauma. And I want you to talk more about your foundation, because that was amazing. That is crazy.
Yeah,
So,
so the Amun's Heart Foundation, right now is small. So after he passed, I used to go to the hospitals every week. Well, not every week, that's a lie. Sorry, every holiday. And like, let me lie on here. Every holiday, like Christmas, Thanksgiving, and stuff. And I provide gift cards to the families or whatever, gift cards, teddy bears, whatever I could offer. And that was on a small scale. Right now, I want to develop it into a large scale where we can actually help families so they don't have to worry about that. Like families in needs. Like maybe there are some families that could afford that kind of, situation, like James Fallon or whatever. But for the small families, the everyday working families that don't have that opportunity to just be like, oh, my stuff is good, my kids are good, I'm just going to be here in the moment with my son. Because although I did get sleep that day, I felt so guilty because I'm like, I wasn't there for you. And the thing is, I didn't want him to experience being alone. I don't know how he felt in that moment. All I know is that I failed. Well, that's how I felt, that I failed in that moment because I wasn't there. And I wouldn't want anyone else to have to go through that. And so the Amun Foundation is going to be supporting families all across the world. That is the large scale. That's my faith. We're going to support families all across the world who are dealing with a child suffering from a heart condition. And we are going to provide housing. We're going to provide money for bills. We are going to not just pray with them. We are going to financially help them and assist them.
That's amazing. Wow. If we wanted to donate, where do we do that at?
Getting the website together now. And if you follow me on social media, Marcia Hurt on Facebook, the Marcia Speaks on Instagram and TikTok, I will have all the information hopefully by August.
Okay. I'm going to add you now, and I'm going to save some money so that I can donate, because I always want to donate to charities and stuff, but I need to know what I'm donating to. So this is amazing. And to hear your story helps so much more as well. So continue to keep sharing that, because it's going to make your business so successful. And it's not all about success, but you're going to help so many people that were in your shoes, and only you really know what that's like.
Yeah.
So I'm so proud of you. Good for you.
So Marcia, can you also share about the podcast that you're on?
Yeah, Sister Girl Podcast is a podcast with me and my co-host. We just talk about things that women go through. It's currently just audio, and we just finished the first season. It's on all your streaming platforms, Amazon, you name it, it's there. It's Sister Girl Podcast, and we just finished. We had 26 episodes. So go listen. We'll be back in fall with some new material. We talk about everything. It's really for men and women. Whoever wants to.
That's good. That's good too, though. That's good. Because these men love podcasts and they love women's business.
That is so amazing. And I love how you, even after, everything you've been through with your son, with, not, your spouse, not being together anymore, and then still being able to raise your kids and having this foundation and dedication of your son and reaching out to people and helping others, because you've been there, you were alone, didn't have the support, and now you want to support those that may be going through the same familiar situations. And that is amazing, because, we need that. We need those that are going to understand where we're coming from in familiar situations. And some people don't know that there's so many resources out there, because nobody speaks to them about it, because they don't have anyone to give them the information, or like, hey, this is a resource, this is a nonprofit. Sometimes it's sad that, we know about it, but some people just won't speak about it and help those in need. And thank you so much for that. And you can tell that you are strong, women of strength, that you have continued to stand strong, not only on that, just faith, period, and then God, using your son as like the biggest purpose in your life to allow you to keep going and helping others. I love that so much.
He really did save you, and now I feel like you're saving the world. That's crazy.
Hey, the world, that's pretty big. But if God, I think you said it earlier, like, or it was in it's something I saw that I think the Bible says we overcome the enemy with our testimony. And so if I can share, absolutely, let's do it.
Yes.
Well, I have one question for you. We ask all our guests this. I know we've talked about a lot, and we've seen you in different lights and aspects. But outside of everything that we talked about, what makes you uncommon? If you had to say.
Oh, what makes me uncommon?
Yeah,
is that
something that we don't know.
I've been through hell and back as far as heartbreak, and I still choose to love anyway.
Oh. Yes.
I love that.
That was great. Well, everybody, that was Marcia Hurt. Hurt, right? Or Hurt?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Hurt. You can follow her on Facebook at Maria Hurt. And what was your Instagram as well?
Marcia Speaks, and Instagram Instagram and TikTok. Marcia Speaks.
Okay. Oh, she's on TikTok
too.
Please
and I'm
follow
about to
her.
get a YouTube channel. So
Yes, please do it, because I'm telling you, people like me will be in tune, because you are inspiring and you're doing a lot. So that's good. And if you or anyone watching knows someone that has a good testimony that would like to be on the show, please send them as a reference. You can email us at uncommonwomenpodcast@gmail.com. We are also on Instagram at Uncommon Women Podcast. We're also transitioning to television. So if you know anyone that needs help promoting, let us know, because we'll be working on commercials to do so and help them. Same with you. I know that you have a foundation. So once you get that up and running, let us know. We would love to promote that. Okay.
Thank you.
We like to keep our village strong, and we want to make something of ourselves, and we want to stay uncommon. So thanks, everybody. This was Uncommon Woman.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you've been shacking up with us for a while and haven't subscribed to our channel, what are you waiting for? Please like and subscribe to Uncommon Woman so you won't miss another episode. And remember, don't let anything or anyone affect your peace. Good vibes, and stay uncommon.